68755, 5 miles southwest for landing Merrill, over.
Army 68755, this is Merrill Tower. Enter right base, landing runway 9. Wind 120 degrees at 8 knots. Altimeter 2987. Report 1 mile base, over.
This is Army 68755, roger. Merrill Tower, this is Army 10745. We are 18 miles northwest of Merrill and having difficulty maintaining VFR. What is your weather, over?
Army 10745, this is Merrill Tower. Merrill weather is 1,500 feet overcast, visibility 1 mile, and scattered thunder showers in the area, over.
Merrill, this is Army. Look out! Watch it! I've got it! Mayday! 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 Full pitch! Full pitch! Mayday! Mayday! Merrill, this is...
Army 10745, are you okay, over?
Okay, I have it. Near Flowers Crossroads. We have personnel on the way now. If you could keep people away from the wreckage, we would appreciate it. Okay, thank you, sir. Activate the secondary crash alarm. They did crash.
S3 285th, Sergeant Weberson, sir.
Major Wilson, please.
One moment, please. Sir, telephone.
Major Wilson, sir.
Sir, this is Sergeant Jordan, Airfield Operations. We've had an aircraft accident.
Go ahead.
A UH-1 Bravo, number 10745.
This is Major Fred Wilson, S3 of the 285th Aviation Battalion, and President of the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board.
Foxtrot Kilo 050-9er-56. 2 fatalities reported.
Crash coordinates are Foxtrot Kilo 050-9er-56.
Roger.
I'll have the board there as soon as possible. Sergeant Weberson, there's been an aircraft accident. Notify the other board members and have them meet me here.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi, dear. You look tired. How was the duty last night?
Oh, rough. Taking the afternoon off. I'll take a nap after lunch.
Good. I took the baby to the doctor this morning.
Captain Turner.
This is Sergeant Weberson. There's been an aircraft accident.
What unit?
This is Captain Jerry Turner, Executive Officer, 265th Assault Helicopter Company, and a member of the investigation board.
Right. I'm on my way. Honey, there's been an accident. I'll call you.
Mr. Davenport, sir, we have an emergency telephone call for you.
This is Chief Warrant Officer Joseph Davenport, Maintenance Officer, 221st General Support Company.
Mr. Davenport.
He recently graduated from the USAVE's Aviation Accident Prevention course. He is another member of the investigation board.
Okay. I'll be right there.
Sir, I've notified Captain Turner and Mr. Davenport. The flight surgeon has already departed for the accident site.
Okay, fine. Call Lieutenant Kirby also. He needs the experience.
Yes, sir.
An essential element of an accident prevention program is the immediate investigation, reporting, and analysis of all accidents. Aircraft accident investigation boards are appointed for this purpose in accordance with AR 385-40. A duly appointed board is part of the pre-accident plan. After appointment, the President convenes the investigation board for the purpose of organizing and preparing for an eventual accident. Several weeks ago, Major Wilson met with the board.
Gentlemen, as members of the Fort Merrill Aircraft Accident Investigation Board, we will be on orders for about the next 6 months. For the next 30 days, Captain Turner, Captain Morris, Mr. Davenport, and I will be the primary members on call. The rest of you will get your chance later. Lieutenant Kirby, since this is your first investigation, I will call on you whenever there's an opportunity for you to gain some experience. Now, let me remind all of you that while on primary call, we must be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if you need to be excused from standby during this period, give me a call so that I can arrange for someone else to take your place. And by the way, if you are called out, please let your boss know about it. We had a case here recently where an officer went off on an investigation and no one in his unit knew where the hell he was for 2 days. Now, in our role as the investigation board for this post, the Accident Investigation Board, we have two primary functions. The first is to determine all the established, probable, or suspected factors which might have caused or contributed to the accident. Secondly, we are to evaluate and analyze the acquired information and to develop recommendations for actions that might prevent the recurrence of similar accidents. In order to be able to react promptly and conduct a thorough and timely investigation, we must be well organized and familiar with the areas of investigation. There are three general areas that we are concerned with: personnel, material, and records. Now, these areas are broad in nature and often interrelated. The personnel area includes all those persons involved, such as the flight crew, the maintenance personnel, and witnesses. The materiel area includes all systems, parts, and support facilities. The records area includes all those records associated with the flight, to include maintenance, flight logs, and training documents. Now, we have 5 basic phases to an investigation: orientation and examination, collection of data, analysis of data, conclusions or findings, and recommendations. Now, all these are explained in detail in a regulation, AR 95-5, which I will give to you later. Now, Captain Turner, you will be our recorder. Now, initially, I want you to locate and interview witnesses. I also want you to secure an accident investigation kit.
Yes, sir. I might suggest that each member prepare a kit of special items they might need. Now, I'll provide each of you with a list of the equipment in the issue kit as well as the augmentation kit that I will prepare.
Very good. Captain Morris, the flight surgeon's actions are pretty well defined.
Yes, sir, especially in the human factors area. Now, I'll need some assistance in determining crash survivability.
Well, I'll work with you on that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davenport, your initial action will be the wreckage distribution diagram.
Fine.
After that is complete, begin your systems investigation.
Yes, sir.
Now, I'll take care of getting the photographer out to the crash site. Now, here is a packet for each of you. It contains AR 95-5, the regulation on investigation and reporting, a crash grid map, and various reporting forms. Now, study them so that you're thoroughly familiar with the techniques of investigation, especially in your specific areas of responsibility. It also contains a crash pass. Be sure to wear it if we're called out. Any questions?
Sir, will we meet again before you change the primary members on call?
Yes, we will, and I will designate your primary duties then. Any other questions? All right. We'll adjourn and reconvene on call. Is my Jeep here, Sergeant Weberson?
Yes, sir. Your driver has picked up the photographer and they're waiting outside. Mr. Davenport is bringing his Jeep also.
Good. I'll load up. Oh, by the way, have you called about that training ammo?
No, sir. I'll do that right away.
Fine.
Working in accordance with the pre-accident investigation plan, the active members of the board converge at Major Wilson's building and prepare to move out to the scene of the accident. As the members arrive, Major Wilson confirms their duties and responsibilities and ensures that the necessary equipment is on hand. He briefly explains what has happened, and the board departs for the crash site.
Morning, sir. I've identified the crew as Major Stewart and Chief Warrant Officer Burton. Both men suffered fatal injuries. The aircraft is taking their remains to the hospital now.
Too bad. Mr. Davenport, let's get this area roped off. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Kirby, you want to come along with me?
Sure.
Bring that engineer's tape, will you, please?
Adequate equipment is vital to an effective investigation. While a standard kit is available through supply channels, it must be supplemented according to climate and terrain.
We were lucky there was no fire.
That's for sure. Now, if you recall, the first thing we're concerned about is the rescue of personnel. Since that's already been taken care of, our next concern is preserving evidence. So if you'll rope off a wide area around this wreckage, I'll take some oil and fuel samples, and then we can prepare a wreckage distribution diagram. And that's going to require that we make a thorough search for parts.
You want us to tag everything?
Yes, sir. You never know when the smallest piece will give you the answer.
Witnesses should be located as soon as possible. Local law enforcement officers, newspapers, and radio and TV stations may be helpful in locating witnesses.
Good morning, sir. May I speak with you for a moment?
Yes, sir.
I'm Captain Turner, a member of the Fort Merrill Aircraft Accident Investigation Board. Now, is there any information you can give me about the crash?
Not much. I was on routine patrol about 30 miles away from here when I got the news over the radio. I was ordered to get here as fast as possible. When I arrived, the medevac helicopter and the MPs were already here.
Well, do you know of anyone who may have seen or heard the crash?
Yes, I do. Those two men standing over near that tree. They told me that they heard the helicopter and actually saw the crash.
Did you get their names, sir?
Yes, sir, I did. I have them right here. One is Leonard Barker. He lives right over there. The other is Mr. Frank Calloway of Huntsville, Alabama.
Now, where can I get in touch with you later?
I'm Sergeant Billy Joe Livingston, and I'm from the local trooper post. Telephone number 343-5800.
Well, thank you very much for your cooperation.
Anytime.
Sir, I made a thorough examination and photographed the bodies with my own camera before evacuating them.
Okay, are you ready to start the crash survival investigation?
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, go ahead, then. I'm going to coordinate with the MPs on security for the area.
Yes, sir. Could I use the photographer for a while?
Certainly.
Ready to go to work?
Yes, sir.
All right. Come with me.
Photographs are extremely important because they are one of the best means of preserving physical evidence for later study and evaluation. But they are only useful if they are captioned and identified to explain in detail what the picture is supposed to show. When photographing something specific, use a pointer. Also, use a ruler or something to show comparative size. Just as it is important that photographs be of good quality and composition, it is equally important to adequately photograph the wreckage. AR 95-5 specifies the minimum requirements.
Hello, sir. Let's get all these people out of here and establish a guard post on the road beyond that hedgerow. Then I think we'll be able to keep the general public out of here. Now, don't let anyone into the immediate area without a crash pass. You can send the crash rescue people back also. I'll send the guard detail to relieve you as soon as possible.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, I'm Captain Turner of the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board. Now, we're trying to determine the cause of this accident. Now, I understand you both saw the crash.
That's right, did. Sure did.
May I have your name, sir?
Leonard Barker.
And yours, sir?
Frank Calloway.
Gentlemen, our primary purpose in collecting information and interviewing witnesses is to help us determine the cause factors of this accident. Now, any information you give us will be used for accident prevention purposes only.
I'll tell you everything I know. Sure will.
Witnesses are usually cooperative in making statements if the purpose of the investigation is explained. The investigator should convince the witness that the accident board is primarily interested in gathering all the factual information concerning the accident. So that the testimony of one witness will not influence the testimony of others, witnesses should be questioned individually for the best possible results. Captain Turner will ask the witness to explain exactly what he saw or heard before, during, and after the accident. He will also ask the witness to establish his position in relation to the accident site when he observed the crash. Upon completion of his interview with Mr. Barker, Captain Turner will interview Mr. Calloway and anyone else who may have information about the accident.
How's it going, Doc?
I may have found something significant, sir. Now, it appears that this push-pull rod...
In order to determine the cause of injuries or fatalities, crash survival investigations are made of all aircraft accidents which result in injury or death. The flight surgeon will make the initial investigation to determine if the accident was survivable. Life support equipment and personal equipment, which is in any way implicated in the cause or prevention of injury and is damaged, will be sent to the Commander, United States Army Aeromedical Research Laboratory at Fort Rucker, Alabama.
These are the oil and fuel samples I have to send to the lab.
Yes, sir. I'll take care of them.
Thanks.
Now, this is the area that's critical, but be sure to include the whole helmet in your frame. Now, can you get it okay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davenport.
What have you found?
What do you think made this mark?
Well, it looks like it might have been made by the tail stinger. Get the photographer to photograph it for you and record the measurements.
Will do.
And when you're through, how about joining me so we can complete that wreckage diagram?
Sure will.
Sir, I've interviewed all the witnesses I could find.
Did you get any information that will help us?
Yes, sir, I've got it all on tape.
Good. We'll discuss the witness interviews at the board meeting this evening at 1800.
Sir, Lieutenant Kirby's working on the wreckage diagram. If it's okay with you, I'd like to go back now. I want to check a few maintenance records before our meeting tonight.
Okay, I'll take Captain Morris and Lieutenant Kirby back. Captain Turner, why don't you go back with Mr. Davenport and begin a personnel and records check at operations?
Yes, sir.
Broken. That's what I want you to get. Yeah.
Sir, is there something else I can do now?
I don't know. This thunder shower looks like it's going to move in any minute. Let's just check over the area and then head back and get the information organized for the meeting tonight.
Yes, sir.
Well, what do you think of accident investigation now, Lieutenant Kirby?
I didn't realize how much effort was involved, sir. But I think they just got too low trying to maintain VFR and hit that tree.
Whoa, hold on now. The one thing we don't want to do is to draw premature conclusions. Let's keep an open mind until we've obtained all the information we possibly can. Then we make our findings, okay?
Yes, sir, I can see the importance of that.
Ready, Doc?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go.
Make sure no one gets in the crash site without a pass. We'll be back here early tomorrow morning.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, let's go over the information we've been able to collect so far. We'll start with Captain Morris. Doc?
Well, sir, the bodies are in the hospital undergoing autopsy. And it appears that Major Stewart suffered a ruptured aorta and Chief Warrant Officer Burton a head injury. Now, the shoulder harnesses and the seat belts were in use at the time of the crash. I'll be able to give you a more complete picture after the autopsies.
Mr. Davenport, we'll hear from you now.
Well, sir, in checking the last 6 months' record of the aircraft, I found an area that we'll really have to dig into. Now, the current Dash 13 had 2 write-ups concerning the attitude indicators. On July the 17th, the co-pilot's attitude indicator was removed, and the aircraft was placed on a diagonal. On the 20th of July, the day before the accident, another entry shows that the pilot's attitude indicator was inoperative, but the status symbol still showed the aircraft on a diagonal. Now, this could be of significance considering the weather conditions.
It certainly could. Anything else?
Yes, sir. As you know, the aircraft was equipped with crash-resistant fuel cells. Now, the system functioned perfectly. There were no ruptures or broken lines, so no fire.
Yes, that system certainly has reduced thermal injuries and death due to post-crash fires. Captain Turner, what do you have to report?
Well, sir, after I finished interviewing witnesses, I went over to operations and got a copy of the crew's flight plan. Now, the crew filed a flight plan from Merrill Army Airfield to Fort Lansing, Georgia. Their weather briefing indicated VFR en route. Now, the crew had planned an hour-and-a-half stay at Fort Lansing and then a return flight to Merrill. Now, so far, nothing in particular has shown up in reference to a cause factor. But I'll know more when I go up to Fort Lansing and get a copy of the crew's return flight plan and weather briefing.
What about the crew's flight records?
Well, I haven't had a chance to go over them, but I'll take care of that first thing in the morning. Now, about the most important thing I've got so far is the information I received from the only two witnesses I could find. Now, one man was driving near the scene of the accident when he first heard the sounds of the aircraft. Another man actually saw it crash as it came out of what he called heavy fog. And they both came upon the scene of the crash shortly after it happened. And that's about it, sir.
Lieutenant Kirby, do you have anything to add?
Sir, I worked primarily on the wreckage diagram, and we should have it finished by tomorrow.
You did good work out there.
Thank you, sir.
Does anyone have anything else?
Well, sir, I'm going to take a tech inspector and an engine man out to the crash site with me in the morning. I think I also ought to get a tech rep to help me analyze the airframe.
Provisions for technical assistance is part of the pre-accident plan. Aside from the normal assignments of technical assistance, the more complex accidents may require professional skills for analysis. Organizations conducting aircraft accident investigations may request technical assistance through USAIDs.
Captain Turner, when do you think you'll be out there?
Sir, I should finish the operations check by noon. I'll come out to the crash site then.
Okay, I'll see the rest of you out at the crash site at 0730 tomorrow.
The next morning, the board returns to the crash site, accompanied by Mr. Buchan, a tech rep from the aircraft manufacturer. The board continues their on-site investigation until the aircraft can be moved without danger of destroying evidence. Later that afternoon, Mr. Davenport finishes his inspection of the engine.
Sir, we've inspected this engine thoroughly, and I can't find anything externally wrong with it except for some small marks indicating that something may have been ingested into it. I think we ought to send it to a RADMAC for a teardown and analysis, see if it was operating an impact. Okay, but first contact USAIDs to get their approval and a log number.
A RADMAC is short for the United States Army Aeronautical Depot Maintenance Center, located in Corpus Christi, Texas. A RADMAC provides analytical service support to aircraft accident investigation boards. This includes teardown inspection, crash damage investigation, and maintenance evaluation. At the end of the day, the board meets again. These meetings will be conducted each day until the end of the investigation.
Does anyone feel that we ought to recover the aircraft to a hangar for further investigation?
Not from my standpoint.
If extensive wreckage investigation is required, it may be desirable or necessary to move the wreckage from the crash site to a hangar or other suitable area. Care must be taken to avoid further damage and destruction of evidence. For the next 2 days, each member of the board continues to collect information pertaining to the accident. Analysis of the pilot's attitude indicator by Mr. Davenport and Mr. Buchan confirmed that it was in fact inoperative at the time of the accident. During this period, the board members obtained special technical reports, laboratory reports, aircraft maintenance reports, and other data necessary for a complete review and analysis of the facts concerning the accident. This is the 5th day of the investigation. Until now, the board members have pursued every possible course of action in their endeavor to obtain information about the accident. They have re-interviewed the witnesses and carefully evaluated all available evidence accumulated so far. Now, the board is ready to reconstruct a chronological sequence of events.
Gentlemen, I think we've gone about as far as we can with the collection of evidence and information regarding this accident. We've reviewed the unit SOP and found it complied with Army regulations. According to the ARADMAC preliminary report, we know that the engine was operating at impact. The laboratory analysis shows that the oil, hydraulics, and fuel samples met specifications. And according to the tech rep, there was nothing wrong with the structure of the aircraft. Captain Turner, do you have any additional information for the board?
Yes, sir. Now, in checking the flight records of the crew, I found that Chief Warrant Officer Burton was experienced in the UH-1 aircraft. However, he had an expired rotary wing instrument ticket. Now, Major Stewart had limited experience in the UH-1, but possessed a standard rotary wing instrument rating. Now, the 165th Standardization Officer showed me the proficiency charts and the unit standardization policies. He told me he felt Mr. Burton was proficient in VFR flying, but not proficient in IFR flight. Now, he and some of the other pilots in the 165th said that Major Stewart impressed them as letting his overconfidence exceed his capabilities. Now, that's about it, sir.
How about you, Doc?
Well, sir, the medical and pathological reports of both men showed them to be in excellent health. Now, the report also confirmed that the cause of the Major's death was a ruptured aorta. The cause of death to the warrant officer was a head injury. Our further investigation indicated that the Major was a highly motivated individual. Our interviews with his contemporaries and subordinates revealed that he frequently flew in marginal weather conditions to accomplish missions of small importance. Now, on the day of the accident, he stated that he had to return to Merrill that same morning for an important meeting with his commander. Now, this could have been a factor in his decision to return through marginal weather conditions.
Captain Turner, did you get a copy of the crew's flight plan from Fort Lansing to Merrill?
Yes, sir. I picked it up when I went over to Fort Lansing. Now, they filed for 1 hour and 15 minutes en route. The weather briefing they received forecast VFR with scattered thunder showers en route, with minimum ceiling and visibility in the vicinity of thunder showers, 200 feet, 1/4 mile. Now, this supports the witness's description of the weather.
Yes, it does. Mr. Davenport. I have nothing else. Well, gentlemen, what we must do now is prepare the accident report. Now, it's essential that all forms be completed accurately and coherently. The detailed descriptions are contained in AR 95-5. Now, I want your part of the report turned in to Captain Turner no later than noon tomorrow.
After the board members formalize the information they have gathered and have completed the appropriate aircraft accident report forms, they will meet to analyze the information. In this mishap, it was the opinion of the board that the crew inadvertently flew into instrument conditions, became disoriented, and lost control of the aircraft. From these conclusions, the board will develop its findings and recommendations. The sole purpose of aircraft accident investigation is to prevent future accidents. Accidents can be prevented when the causes are known and corrective action is taken. Causes can be determined only by a thorough investigation.
vicinity of phase line red, encountering dense fog, executing a 180 in order to...
As the pilot was trying to make a 180-degree turn out of the fog, his aircraft struck the tops of some large trees which lined the banks of the river. Was this fatal accident avoidable? What would you have done to get out of this situation? A UH-1 with a crew of 3 and 2 passengers took off with a forecast low ceiling and with what they believed to be sufficient clearance to allow safe flight along their planned route. Later, the sole survivor of the crash told investigators that while flying through one of the mountain passes along their route, they encountered fog or low-lying clouds. The next thing he remembered was being evacuated from the wreckage. Apparently, the pilot, in his attempt to return to visual meteorological conditions, flew into the side of the pass. The wreckage was located several hundred feet up the side of the mountain.
I'm Bill Delton, an air safety specialist at the United States Army Agency for Aviation Safety. I've just been getting some current weather information. Weather is an interesting subject for almost everyone. But for those of us in aviation, weather is a matter of vital concern. The cause of mishaps such as you've just seen is often labeled unintentional flight into instrument meteorological conditions, better known as inadvertent IMC. These inadvertent IMC mishaps should be of great concern to the aviator and to the aviation commander because they are so devastating. Come to the office with me and let's discuss this problem further. IMC mishaps seldom result in only a broken skid or bent wing. They are almost always catastrophic in terms of lives lost or equipment destroyed. These occurrences seemingly defy all logic, and apparently they do not discriminate between the inexperienced and the experienced aviator. One of the most common causes of inadvertent IMC accidents is pilots attempting to maintain visual meteorological conditions, VMC, in marginal weather. Why do they attempt to fly visually under these conditions when they would quickly pull over and stop if they encountered the same conditions while driving a car? Suppose on my way to the office, I encountered fog. Would you attempt to fly VFR with this kind of restricted vision? Many aviators have. Maybe that's an exaggerated situation, but don't you think it's appropriate? Come on inside.
In one recent 12-month period, 12 of the 94 accidents recorded involved weather. These 12 weather accidents accounted for more than half of the 55 fatalities for that period. How can an aircraft be clear, blue, and 22 at one moment, and inadvertently IMC the next? Obviously, aviators and commanders are neglecting some key element in VFR procedures. What is this elusive element? It's far more than just apprising aviators and commanders of the inadvertent IMC problem. Too often, the position is taken that there is no such thing as inadvertent IMC, and much like an ostrich, we've covered our heads and hoped the problem would go away. Rather than do this, we must first recognize that we have a problem and then go about finding a means of solving it. Unintentional flight into instrument meteorological conditions has long been a problem for Army aviation. Terrain flying techniques will enhance the survivability of Army aircraft on the battlefield of tomorrow. However, our techniques for dealing with inadvertent IMC at terrain flight level have not proven to be fully adequate. For example, one of our main villains, fog, is a common and persistent weather hazard encountered in aviation. Once it was primarily a hazard only during takeoff and landing. But terrain flying techniques have brought aviation down to these altitudes on a regular basis. When planning for such a mission, you should pay particular attention to your weather briefing, especially the current and forecast temperature and dew point. When these two get to within a couple of degrees of each other, some type of fog will develop. Add dust particles to this, and you have all the makings of dense fog which will be around for some time. Some areas, such as large bodies of water, swampy or marshy land, heavy forest after rain, and valleys, are more apt to become unexpectedly foggy than others. Although FM 1-1 terrain flying presents a new approach to the inadvertent IMC problem, we find that many unit SOPs still contain the old cure-all of execute a 180-degree turn. Successful transition from visual meteorological conditions requires the logical application of a step-by-step procedure to avoid loss of control, confusion, and more importantly, a catastrophic mishap. Analysis of aircraft accident experience has identified task errors that occur repeatedly in inadvertent IMC mishaps. Identification of these task errors led to the development of an inadvertent IMC procedure, which has been labeled the 5 C's. They are control. When you inadvertently encounter IMC, immediately shift your attention to your flight instruments. Level your aircraft while maintaining desired heading. Adjust power to establish a positive rate of climb and stabilize airspeed. Coordination. Establish beforehand that the pilot at the controls will concentrate primarily on his flight instruments. The co-pilot is to monitor the flight instruments as well as the engine instruments and advise when visual conditions are again encountered. Clearance. Ensure clearance above the highest obstacle. Gain required altitude with a straight controlled climb. And then, if required, select and turn to appropriate course heading. Call. Make required radio calls for necessary assistance. Inadvertent IMC can be a killer. This single factor is cited as a cause in more fatal aircraft accidents than all other cause factors combined. As opposed to deliberate instrument flight, inadvertent IMC is an unplanned event generally occurring at low altitudes and low airspeeds and with the air crew totally unprepared for instrument flight. Aircraft impact angles and speeds, as well as statements of witnesses and survivors, support the contention that a pilot generally makes no attempt to transition to instruments when suddenly losing ground reference. Instead, he tries to return to VMC, either by executing a turn or by descending. In any event, he is attempting to exercise an option which at that time does not exist. Turns away from bad weather or unscheduled landings are to be made before IMC is actually encountered. Once ground reference is lost, the pilot must make an immediate and complete transition to instrument flight. It goes without saying that in a situation such as inadvertent IMC, some of these instruments are not as important to aircraft control as others. The suddenness of inadvertent IMC will not allow the aviator to establish a complete scan. A pilot must learn to cross-check the most critical instruments first. Step by step, he must use the attitude indicator to level the aircraft. Then the heading indicator to maintain selected heading. Once established, by reference to the torque meter, he now adjusts to climb power. And finally, the airspeed indicator to make certain he is established in forward flight with airspeed stabilized. This procedure describes the first C in our recipe, control. The second C, coordination, is taken care of at some time before the flight. It must be established beforehand that the pilot at the controls will concentrate primarily on flying the aircraft on instruments. The co-pilot will monitor the instruments and advise when visual conditions are again encountered. Clearance. Make sure you have adequate clearance above the highest obstacle. This is also covered in the step-by-step procedure when a straight controlled climb is established. Another recipe ingredient, course, is included in the procedure when you make certain you are maintaining the correct heading. The final C, call, is accomplished only when the immediate action steps have been successfully completed and you're ready to begin executing your established inadvertent IMC recovery plan. As a minimum, the 5C procedure, which evolved from combined research and operational experience, should definitely be included in your unit training program. The time to plan for an encounter with inadvertent IMC is before, not during the encounter. The 5C procedure is easy to remember and could be well worth the time it takes to do so. Think about it.
A senseless tragedy. 2 lives lost and a valuable helicopter destroyed. This is Major Frank Walker, Commander, Troop A, 3rd Squadron, 5th Cavalry, the unit to which the deceased aviators were assigned. He has been in command of Troop A for a little over a month.
Come in. Good morning, sir. You sent for me? Yes, Mr. Brewster. Have a seat. I want to talk with you about this report from the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board. I'm very disturbed by the board's findings and want to go over them item by item. Yes, sir. Maintenance error. A tool was left in the transmission area of the aircraft after completion of a periodic inspection. Supervisory error. 1, technical inspection was deficient in that the tool was not discovered. 2, tool control procedures were not complied with. Crew error. Inadequate pre-flight inspection in that the tool was not discovered. What do you say to that?
Well, I can't understand it, sir. We've got a good troop. Morale is high. And our accident rate is the lowest in the squadron.
Until this one.
Yes, sir. Until this one.
Although safety is the responsibility of the unit commander, each individual in the unit must be safety conscious. As Aviation Safety Officer, Chief Warrant Officer Brewster assists, advises, and represents Major Walker in all matters pertaining to safety.
Now let's go over the board's recommendations. 1, ensure that all technical inspectors and test pilots conduct thorough maintenance and pre-flight inspections prior to releasing aircraft for flight. 2, ensure that tool control procedures are firmly complied with. And 3, ensure that all flight crews conduct pre-flight inspections in accordance with pilot's checklist. I'll do more than that. We're going to pull an accident prevention survey and find out what other problems we may have in this troop. I want you to organize a survey team made up of you, my pilot, Mr. Johnson, and the safety NCO. Report back to me at 1600 and brief me on how you plan to conduct the survey. Yes, sir. Sergeant Goen? Yes, sir. Would you come in here, please? Sergeant, we're planning an accident prevention survey. Bring me the personnel information roster and the morning reports for the past 12 months. Yes, sir.
An aircraft accident prevention survey is designed to identify potential aviation hazards in facilities, equipment, and personnel. It is one of the best methods for monitoring a unit's safety program. A survey can save lives and materiel and enable a unit to better accomplish its mission. Prior to the survey, Major Walker obtains the data to complete Section 1, Operational Analysis, in the Guide to Aviation Resources Management for Aircraft Mishap Prevention, a publication prepared by USAVES, the U.S. Army Agency for Aviation Safety, located at Fort Rucker, Alabama. By analyzing the answers to the questions in Section 1, a unit commander can determine the potential weak areas in his command, and therefore most in need of detailed evaluation. Planning a survey is just as important as carrying it out. The Guide to Aviation Resources Management, reports of previous surveys, and a reference file of publications are essential tools and should be used in planning and conducting the survey.
Well, Mr. Johnson, I'd like you to survey operations, aviation training, and aircraft operations. I will cover maintenance and life support. Now, Sergeant Carter, you take POL and armament.
Yes, sir.
Now, we'll be using the USAVE's Guide to Aviation Resources Management. This guide is not a cure-all for our problems. It just outlines the essential tasks and functions needed for a successful safety program. Now, have either of you used this guide before?
No, I haven't. Only in safety school.
Well, each question listed must be answered by yes, no, or non-applicable. The publication reference for the question is listed on the line below. Now, when an answer needs an explanation, make it on the comment sheet on the opposite page. Now, are there any questions?
Sir, should I take the reference material with me during the survey?
Well, no, but you should review the material just prior to surveying each activity. That way it'll still be fresh in your mind.
Right.
We'll start first thing in the morning. Right now, I've got to brief the CO on how we're going to do it.
Morning, Bob. Morning. Morning. Sir, we're conducting an accident prevention survey of the troop. Can you give me some time?
Sure thing. I'll talk to you later.
Yes, sir.
Let's go into my office.
Operations is the nerve center of an aviation unit. This is where operating procedures are tailored to meet the requirements of the organization. Among his many duties, the operations officer is responsible for mission planning, mission scheduling, and air traffic control.
Sir, may I see your operations SOP? Does the SOP cover assignments of aviators for specific missions?
Yes, it does.
Does it contain provisions for the appointment of standardization and instructor pilots?
Yes.
Okay, how about ramp checks?
We keep a record of the daily ramp checks made by me or the operations sergeant.
How do you know all the aviators in the unit have read the SOP?
Each aviator processed into the unit must read the SOP and sign his name indicating that he has. Additionally, he must reread it every 3 months.
How do you know what an aviator's training and experience is?
That's all on the status board. Would you like to see it?
Well, not right now, sir. I'd like to go over the SOP first. Can I work on that table?
Of course.
As Mr. Johnson continues with his survey of the operations section, Mr. Brewster is conducting a survey of the company's maintenance activities. Disorganized shop management, unsafe maintenance practices, and inadequate quality control lead to accidents and failure of a unit to accomplish its mission. To eliminate these deficiencies, the maintenance officer must establish high maintenance standards and ensure that an effective preventive maintenance program is developed and implemented.
Well, how do you handle reports of hazards, near accidents, and unsafe practices?
Well, if they pertain to our unit, I do what I can to correct them. If they don't, we submit operational hazard reports.
Are all your men familiar with the OHRs?
Yes, it's one of the things I explain to every new man.
Do you have adequate lighting for night maintenance?
No, about 25% of the lights are burned out. I've already notified the engineers.
Do you have any unqualified personnel receiving on-the-job training?
Yes. Specialist Nelson over there is OJTing for crew chief, and Specialist Castle is supervising.
Do you keep a record of the training?
Yes, all the OJT records are in my office. Would you like to look at them now?
A little later.
Excuse me, sir. There's one on the phone.
I'll be right back.
Well, how are you coming along?
Okay, sir.
Well, while you were gone, I noticed one of the mechanics wearing a ring and a watch.
They know better. Either of you men wearing rings, watches, or ID bracelets?
Yes, sir. I'm wearing a ring and a watch.
Weren't you at the weekly maintenance meeting when Sergeant Tully talked about the number of men who were injured because they were wearing watches and rings while repairing aircraft?
Yes, sir. I meant to take it off, but I forgot. You should have noticed it, Castle. You're supposed to be supervising him.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again.
Let's see that it doesn't.
Yes, sir.
What would you like to look at now?
Well, how about the battery shop, sir?
All right.
Hazards observed during the course of the survey should be corrected on the spot if possible. However, they are still recorded for inclusion in the final report. At the end of each day, the survey team meets to discuss that day's findings.
I also found that the unit SOP does not go into sufficient detail on the duties of the crew chief during flight. That's about all the deficiencies I found in operations. How did it go in maintenance?
Well, these are the main things I've found so far. Well, the hangar has insufficient lighting, but Captain Jordan has already notified the engineers. In checking the last 3 months' Dash 13s, I found an excessive number of write-ups being carried forward. Also, some of the write-ups by Lieutenant Thomas and Mr. Benton were vague and incomplete. One of the torque wrenches is overdue for calibration. Oh, and one of the OJTs was wearing a ring and watch while working on an aircraft. Well, that's all so far. How about you, Sergeant?
Sir, I spent most of the day reviewing the armament and POL SOPs. I'll begin making an actual survey tomorrow.
Okay. We'll meet again at 1600 tomorrow and compare notes.
For the next few days, the survey team continues its accident prevention survey of Troop A. The survey covers every activity in the unit. For example, the unit must provide training for aviators in many subject areas. This includes individual aviator flight proficiency, knowledge of aircraft operating limitations, and use of flight simulators.
Are checkouts given to aviators in the unit to ensure standardization and proficiency?
Yes. As you saw, the status board shows when each aviator's stand ride is due.
Do we participate in the squadron standardization board?
Mr. Williams, the troop stand pilot, attends meetings along with Mr. Brewster.
How often do you hold classes on the Dash 12s, 13s, and 14s?
We discuss them at the first safety meeting of each quarter.
Sir, may I see the orders appointing our IPs and SIPs?
I'll get them for you.
Safety precautions in the handling of petroleum, oils, and lubricants cannot be overemphasized. Personnel working with aviation fuels and oils are continually subjected to health, fire, and explosion hazards.
I'd like to check the hose and nozzle for leaks. Okay. Petty, start it up and circulate some fuel. The dates of the filter changes stenciled on the filter housings of all tank trucks? Yes, they are. Now would you like to go up on top and check the nozzle? I see you've got a leak there. What about that, Petty? I'll take care of it. Does everyone in the section know the hazards of spilling JP4 on their clothing or skin? You know, I'm not sure. We got a couple of new men in last week. Well, you better make sure. Fuel can destroy the natural fats and oils in the skin. This causes dermatitis, which can lead to infection. Okay, I'll make sure they all know that.
The unit commander must ensure that proper procedures are established and complied with by all personnel involved with flight. This includes pre-flight, starting, run-up, takeoff, hovering, and landing.
Well, I see you have plenty of fire extinguishers handy for engine starts. Are the aircraft being pre-flighted from checklists and not from memory?
Yes, they are. There's one being pre-flighted over there.
Electrical compartment.
Check.
Access doors.
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
While it is important to make comprehensive notes during the survey, it is equally important to do so as inconspicuously as possible. If people feel they are being watched for mistakes, they will resent it.
Well, we've got to get going.
Well, have a good flight.
Thank you. Turbo to drive shaft coupling.
Position and secure. Sir, I'd like to take a look at the fuel sample bottles.
They're over here.
The Army has devoted considerable effort and money towards the development and procurement of equipment to protect aviation personnel from injury. This equipment is of no value unless it is on hand, properly fitted, maintained, and used.
Are you short any Nomex flight suits, gloves, or flight helmets?
No, Jim. Every crew member in the troop is fully equipped.
How do you ensure that each man's flight helmet fits him properly?
The squadron flight surgeon checks proper fit during a new man's medical limb processing. He also checks the helmets during annual flight physicals.
Have you had any defects in any of the life support equipment?
Yes, we've had several pairs of Nomex trousers with defective zippers.
Well, what did you do about them?
I made out EIRs and turned them in.
Well, may I see the EIRs?
Sure.
Armament is a very sensitive area. There is potential danger here, not only for armament personnel, but for all unit personnel who work on or around armed aircraft.
Sir, do you have plenty of cleaning equipment for the weapon systems?
Oh, yeah, and we use it, too. In fact, we've never had a rocket hang fire due to a dirty tube.
What precautions are taken for rockets which are exposed to temperatures above their normal operating range?
If the temperature exceeds the normal limits, they are not fired until normal range is reached, and they're left at that range for a period of at least 6 hours.
What procedures do you take for each range during firing?
We have a range SOP there.
At the conclusion of the survey, the team meets to compile its findings. This will provide the basis for establishing priorities in dealing with accident potentials. A summary briefing will be prepared for the unit commander, which will include all significant findings and recommendations. In addition, a formal report will be prepared and filed for future reference. After the survey team's report has been thoroughly evaluated, Major Walker makes a determination of the action to be taken to eliminate the weaknesses in his troop.
Gentlemen, judging from the number of weaknesses this survey has revealed, it appears this troop is beginning to slide downhill. Obviously, the area which needs attention most is maintenance. It is significant that the findings of the Aircraft Accident Investigation Board included maintenance error. Now, we must improve our maintenance, and we must do it immediately. If not, we may have another accident on our hands. First Sergeant?
Yes, sir.
Have the maintenance officer here at 1400 this afternoon. I also want to see the operations officer and all the platoon leaders at 1600.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brewster, beginning tomorrow morning, I want you to make certain that
Mission accomplishment with 0 accident rate is the primary objective of the U.S. Army Safety Program. Experience has proven that high levels of sustained performance can be achieved only through effective management of all segments of the command. Properly administered, an aircraft accident prevention survey can reveal the weaknesses or potential weaknesses existing in a unit. After analyzing the deficiencies, the aviation safety officer and safety NCO will recommend changes in policy, procedures, and facilities which will help prevent future accidents. The commander will then take appropriate action to ensure that his unit will operate with maximum efficiency at minimum risk.